The best advice I ever received was from my mom and dad, who told me, "You are not put on this earth to be served. You are on this earth to create value for others. It is through that value that you will be served."
So, Joseph Michelli, your mom gave you that advice. How little were you, or how big were you when she told you?
I don't think she ever stopped telling me. And no matter how old I got, it just kept coming. Just remind yourself, young man, you're not here to receive, you're here to give.
Wow, that's fantastic. That's such great advice at an early age. And certainly you have written all about serving for a long time. So your latest book is Customer Service Magic. And we'll get that at readcustomermagicbook.com. We'll talk about that in a little bit. So with that, what inspired you to write this book about Macquarie?
Well, most of my books are about brands that everybody knows, like the Ritz Carlton or Zappos or Mercedes Benz. And so I got this call from a telecommunications provider, a CEO of a telecommunications provider in Australia a number of years ago. They said, "We read your book about Ritz Carlton. We're really passionate about customer experience, much like the Ritz Carlton. And we'd love for you to consult with us. And we'd love for you to kind of look into what we're doing and help us along the way." And first off, I thought it was a prank call because, come on, Phil, how many telecom communications authentically care about serving anybody, right? And the accent sounded authentic, but other than that, everything else was a little hokey. But over time, and I was really a slow warm up to them. Over time, I really saw that they were doing something fundamentally different, particularly in that business to business space where people treat you either special around the renewal time, or they see you as just a transactional object and don't think customer experience is applicable to you. So in any regard, they really were doing it well for mid-sized and larger businesses in Australia, and their success just catapulted them into a variety of different industries. And I thought, what the heck? There are a lot of us challengers out there, us little guys who are working our rear ends every day, and we don't necessarily get books written about us. So I thought I would use Macquarie as an example of the challenger that did good.
Awesome. I love that. I love that. Well, you called the book Customer Service Magic. So what is the magic, right? What's the customer magic that is there? What does magic mean?
Well, yeah, I mean, magic, I stole the definition of magic from Carol Moseley Braun, who's a former US Congresswoman. And she basically said that magic is challenging the seemingly impossible. And I love that definition so much. It really took away that whole idea of, there's tricks and there's mysticism, and magic really is just challenging the seemingly impossible. So if you're in a place where people say, you can't do that on behalf of customers, you shouldn't do that, we've tried that, and you're the person who says, wait, well, maybe we have, but there's got to be something we can do to create value beyond what we're doing right now. You are performing customer magic, particularly if you execute against those ideas.
Wow. So where do we start if we want to create magic in our organization like Macquarie did in theirs?
Yeah, I think they identified what their mission was, which was essentially to create value for markets that were overcharged and underserved. So that's the mission, right? So if we start looking around and thinking, where are people getting overcharged or underserved for whatever it is that we're transacting business around? And those are our opportunity spaces. So in the telecom industry, no one was providing service in Australia to mid-sized business telecoms. They had just come out of, the regulated world where a government-owned legacy provider had controlled it, much like AT&T had in the US for a long time. So they said, well, we're no longer going to be subject to that one carrier. Let's figure out ways to make bills readable. So when you get your bill, you can say, I understand what they're charging me for. Let's have humans available to actually solve problems when I have them, or help me plan ways to create success for my business.
Okay. That seems pretty simple, right? We start with our mission, and we start with the mission of the underserved and really underloved.
Yeah.
Of that. So how do we though galvanize our people to get them behind that mission?
I think most people want to make a contribution day in and day out. We're going to collect a paycheck. Why not feel good about what we do every day? And I think a starting point is to hire people who have in them a mission to provide service. So not everybody wants to deal with people and make their lives better in direct interaction. And that's okay. I mean, there's a space for all of us. I think there's going to be less space for those folks because most of those functions are going to be taken up by AI. But if you authentically want to use your humanity to make the life of someone better, then join our team and let's evaluate you first for your capacity to have that customer service gene. Assuming we get the right people in the right seats in the right bus, right? Then the question is, how do we identify their personal mission in life? What do you want your career to have been about when you put up your pocket protector or take away your visor, right? Like, what is it going to all be about? And I think if we can help them identify what meaning is at work and then link their sense of meaning at work to our opportunity around the mission we aspire to achieve. Now we have, an internal and external alignment around the mission. And then we just keep emphasizing what it looks like to be on mission and be on purpose and be on values. And we catch people doing those things right every day and tell stories about the ones who are living our mission by these specific behaviors. And, I think that's, I know your work on sales development, you really emphasize the importance of getting people aligned around those kind of outcomes, and the sales will follow, right? Like if you can get people to understand there's more than numbers to successful business, you have a sustainable business enterprise.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Well, let's back up just a little bit there. How deep did you go into their hiring process? Can you tell us a little bit about their hiring and evaluation?
Yeah, they did it wrong for a long time. So they kind of got it right over time, right? Like they were looking for the best and brightest people coming right out of engineering school. Like that was the original approach, like the top 1%, 5% of people coming out of engineering school. And they realized that a lot of those people are real just jerks when it comes to helping other people with their problems. They may be really smart about solving a problem, but they're not necessarily the people you would call. If they were a family member, you wouldn't call them to help you with a technical problem because they make you feel stupid by the time you're done with the interaction. So they really started to look more at that hungry, humble, and smart dimensions that Patrick Lencioni writes about. So let's find people who are hungry, who are willing to learn, who don't think they have it all figured out. It's good to sometimes select people who haven't been in an industry for a long period of time because they come at it with a different perspective. They also were looking at that humility. This is a long journey. We don't need people who think they know it all now. We need people who are consistently open to growing their capacity to serve others. And then, finally, you do have to have smart people. You have to have people who can do more than fog your mirror in order to deliver solutions to people. So they were looking for that trifecta. They developed behavioral interviewing questions that really got at, what does great service look like? What does poor service look like? Here's a scenario. Tell me how you might have screwed this up. Tell me how you might make it work well. Tell me mistakes you've made in customer service. And through that whole process, you get to that humility, you get to that hunger, and you get to the intellect to be resourceful in those circumstances.
Excellent. Well, that sounds like something any organization could do, but what are some of the things that prevent organizations from getting there? What maybe slowed Macquarie down from getting there faster?
Well, I think a lot of what Macquarie had as their challenge was that they had adopted a traditional perspective of their industry on how to hire engineers. I think they had always been wanting to create more value than everyone else, but they were constantly challenged by competitors who were using outsourced solution providers. So they would constantly have to reevaluate, should we offshore this or can we keep this near shore and people who we are in our direct world of influence as opposed to third parties. So I think they were just pulled in by all the other things. They look across the way to see what the competitor is doing, and it slows you down to be who you are.
Yeah, definitely does. Definitely does. So with that, one of the things that you talk about in the book is freedom within boundaries. Not freedom just willy-nilly running all over the place, doing your own thing, but within boundaries. So talk to me about that and why that's so important.
Well, they're really, they have various business enterprises within Macquarie now. So they have a cybersecurity business. It covers a lot of the Australian government functions. They have cloud business. So they are where the cloud lives in Australia. They have a lot of data centers, for example, as well as their telecom business and others. And each of those business heads really operates independently. They are all independent business owners. They have that entrepreneurial spirit. There's a little healthy competition among them, but ultimately they're all measured against some boundaries, some key performance indicators that I don't care if you're in cloud or cyber, you're still going to be measured based on your net promoter score. You're going to be measured on your EBITDA. You're going to be measured on a calculation of overall revenue. So when you put those same yard markers for everyone to measure their progress against. And you allow them lots of independence and autonomy on how they go about doing it, as long as they execute against those objectives. You really have freedom within boundaries.
Awesome. Yeah, that sounds like something that we'd all want more of, not less of. And those boundaries help us make sure that we stay aligned, to your point from before, right? The better the alignment, the better the boundaries, if you will. A lot of times, the better we can execute on those goals. Is that what Macquarie found as well?
Yeah, I mean, if you don't execute on that trifecta of revenue and enterprise value and net promoter score, you really aren't playing part of the team, and you don't advance the overall brand cause of Macquarie. Because heaven forbid somebody's just generating a lot of revenue today, but their customers are disgruntled and are prone to churn tomorrow. It really is a set of unifying parameters that says we are Macquarie. We nail these three things exquisitely within our own styles and nuances of our business areas.
Wow. Wow. So with all that, right, this sounds like this is fairly simple to do, and it's easy enough that we can understand it here. But you shared a stat that I got here from the Carey School of Business that was just remarkable. 74% of customers report issues, up from 66% in 2020. 80% of companies think their customer service is well, but only 8% of customers actually agree. How can there be such a large, I mean, that's not even close.
Yeah, and Phil, unlike you, who has a great sense of humor, lots of people think they have a sense of humor, but until somebody has to vote on that, it doesn't really come true. And not everyone's children are above average, right? I mean, at some point, we have to concede that the evaluation of great customer experience is done by customers. We are in the perception business, and so if you look at the way the data is going, including a customer satisfaction index that's declining now 17 years straight. We have lots of aspirations to deliver great customer experiences, but we're just not executing against it. So yes, we understand what it looks like, but when you get right down to it, you make the hard decisions to make it happen. It is challenging. And I think we do need inspirations and examples of people who are finding their way in the maze. Somebody who we can see in the tree telling us, no, don't go left because there's not much cheese down that tunnel, right? And so I think Macquarie is a great example, a pretty humble example. There's plenty of stories within the book of where they've stumbled, where they made very complicated customer satisfaction indexes until they unified around NPS as their true north for customer engagement. So lots of, I think, data points of success, lots of toil and trouble, but ultimately a noble path to follow.
So you mentioned complicated surveys. Is the key to a lot of this just to simplify all of our processes down as far as we can so that our customers don't get stuck in the maze and can actually just walk from point A to point B to point C?
Yeah, I don't know about you, Phil, but my life seems to get more and more complicated no matter how simple I try to make it, right? So the more we can reduce complexity for customers, the better off we are. The more we can remove friction, the more we can reduce customer effort, the better off we are. If your survey requires a massive amount of effort, then heaven forbid, you're not going to get the level of engagement and response from that survey. It's going to help you understand how else you can remove effort for the customer journey. So yeah, I think simplification is a key. And it speaks to all those, those examples where people said, I've written a shorter letter if I had, more time, right? Like it really takes some thoughtful time to reduce yourself to the most salient components.
Yeah, definitely does. It's hard work, but work worth doing, as Macquarie has pointed out there. One of the other chapters in the book that I found super fascinating was this Noah's Ark of innovation. Can you talk about that, please?
Yeah, so down in Australia, those guys are really willing to go around the world to study trends so they can identify what is likely to work in Australia. So what they'll do is they do these innovation tours every 6 months or so, and they bring a vast majority of different people from their organizations. That's the Noah's Ark reference, right? Like they bring salespeople, they bring marketing people, they bring engineers, they bring finance people, and they'll come to the U.S. and they'll study what they think is an emerging trend in technology, and they will then go to many providers of that particular trend in the U.S., understand it, talk to their customers, go back to Australia and say, is this going to work here? And there are times they've said no. I mean, it works in a country with the population distribution of the US, or it works in the UK and in a more village cottage industry kind of culture, but it's not going to work here in the wilds of Australia, right? So they sometimes turn it down, or they modify it to make it relevant to their audience. But what they're doing is they're constantly getting out of their own shadow, right? And looking for indicators beyond at the horizon line. And I think if you want to take this in the small business world, if you have a restaurant and you aren't going around and sampling other kinds of experiences outside of the one across the street, you're probably not fully innovating, looking for trends that you can actually bring to your community and make it relevant to your consumers.
Then you mentioned the whole that they went outside of their industry. Is there one example that was completely out that maybe you can share with us to give us some inspiration to think outside the box?
Sure. So some of it for them is just meeting with people who do extraordinary customer service, right? So they're going to go and benchmark and have conversations with those companies, just looking for what is it that is the difference between good and great in customer service, even though, from an innovation standpoint, they're limited to the innovation of service within the context of the technology sector. But they're going to spend time at a Ritz-Carlton trying to understand under the hood, what is Ritz-Carlton doing to anticipate the needs of its guests, so we can leverage whatever that customer listening analytics competency and innovate some strategies within our sector.
We can do that. That sounds like something more companies should do. So why don't they?
We're so busy just doing our business. It's sometimes difficult to strategically get out of it and think about our business. And even more so, why invest money in something that may or may not produce innovation ideas for you? And so I think a lot of people are just locked down. Why would I want to take my chef out of the kitchen and go to New York and do a food tour of New York if I'm trying to provide meals here in Tampa, Florida?
Wow. Yeah, I guess that it just seems like if you want to be world class, you have to study world class. You can't just study what's right under my nose.
Yeah. Yeah. And you have to bring in people like Phil to your organization to share ideas. That's the other thing you have to do. So I just want to make sure that I could throw that plug in for you, because I know the impact of your work.
Thank you. Thank you. So with that, how do we get the best and brightest that are in the service to come to our organization if we're in Australia, New Zealand, or Tampa, Florida?
Well, I think at first you have to keep your eyes out for them all the time. In the course of daily commerce, there are people who delight you. When you find them, you have to always have your card ready and say, love what you did today. This was fabulous. I appreciate the way you served me in, solar installation or whatever the phenomena is. And if there's ever a time you're looking for, more opportunities within your development of this great service talent of yours, please let me know. So I think you need to be on the lookout always. You should be ready to poke in the world and try to bring them to your organization. And hopefully, if they're in your organization, you've treated them so well that when people do that, they just smile and say, thanks. No, I love what I'm doing and I'm growing well here. So, we should hold on to them and make sure that they're viewed as the VIPs of our organization. That said, I think once you have developed a reputation of caring about customers and caring about your team members, it's easier to attract than those organizations that are just using pure incentives to do it. Because most of us want to make a lot of money, but if money's comparable, and I can work in a place where I can feel proud of what I do every day, and they care about my growth development, give me mastery and autonomy, I'm there. So I think it's just the basic things of retaining or attracting any great employee.
Yeah. You mentioned comparable money. So how close are we talking? Are they in the top 90? Are they top 110?
I think they're straight up in the same zone. But what they do is make sure you get your certifications as you develop as engineers. So they guarantee that, and they're signing a contract with you that says this employment term is 2 years. At the end of 2 years, you're free to go somewhere else, but we're going to provide you all these trainings, all these certifications, and you'll leave ready to go at 2 years. We believe that if we develop you to there and we show you the roadmap of where you can go in the next 5 years, you're not going anywhere, but don't feel obligated. Work really hard for the next 2 years per this contract, and you're going to be you're going to be a better person, more competent, more capable when you leave, both from your technical and your interpersonal skills. And so that's what they do at the early engineer starts, and they have these long-term roadmaps, and they have a clear employee value proposition with those certifications, that ongoing training, financial advancements with each certification improvement. So you're being graded mostly on the meritocracy and your growth, not necessarily just based on longevity with an organization.
Wow. Well, before I ask you one more question here, Joseph, I just want to recommend folks go to readcustomermagic.com, get a copy of the book, learn more about the philosophies of Macquarie, and read some of Joseph's other books as well. Super good stuff, all about Ritz-Carlton, Starbucks, Amazon, now all about Macquarie, Mercedes-Benz, all sorts of good stuff. So if you were to encourage an organization, other than buying a copy of your books, which I would recommend, where should they get started if they're like, well, I'm not really sure, but this sounds like a good idea?
Well, I think the beginning of any journey is to look at yourself and understand what are your strengths and what are your opportunities in this space. How do you want customers to feel in every interaction every time? That's my favorite question. What are your core strengths to ensure that people could feel that way, that it's authentic to your values and your business? And once you've answered those two questions, then I would start looking at books like The Experience Economy. I'd read Shep Hyken's work, for example. He's done great work on the convenience revolution. All those, there's much out there in this area. But I think it all starts with looking inward and saying, who am I? What do I uniquely bring to the marketplace? What's my unique value proposition? And what do I want people to feel every single time they interact with my brand, whether they're employees or customers or vendors or whatever label we want to smack on human beings? How do we make sure those humans have those very human experiences unique to our brand?
How do I want to make people feel? A question that we don't ask often enough, Joseph. I love that question. That's a great way to bring us home. Again, friends, if you're looking to create some more magic in your organization for customer service, go to readcustomermagic.com, get a copy of the book, and get to know Joseph Michelli. He's full of great wisdom, full of great books, and full of a great smile.